Hi, welcome to Hamilton and Hazen, Behind the Mic. Join author M.L. Hamilton and me, I'm narrator Kelly Hazen, as we discuss our latest audiobook. Born from our 7 years of collaboration and more than 60 audiobooks we've produced together, listen to the ins, the outs, the ups, and the downs, the inside track you love to follow, Behind the Mic.
Welcome to our second version, or second iteration, or what do we want to call it? Episode of Behind the Mic. Today I'm with Kelly Hazen and Bruce Carver, the amazing team that makes up Storyteller Productions. And we're going to be talking about my first series, the World of Samar series. It was the first series that I wrote that was traditionally published through a publisher in England, and recently given new life through audiobooks by Kelly and Bruce. What's super exciting about this is that we just released the box set. It's the first 2 books in the series. And last year, I think it was December, we received multiple awards on this series, which are really exciting. And I think what I want to really address today is how unique this series is and how different it is from anything else out there in the audiobook world. So, Kelly, you want to talk a little bit about the awards that we received at the end of last year?
It was pretty exciting. You write in so many genres, and in terms of getting awareness, it's not always easy. Different genres. There's different websites and different reviewers that prefer different genre, and so but audiobookraeviewer.com. Let me just say that again: audiobookraeviewer.com. They're so wonderful, and they recently went through a change. I think a lot of audiobook listeners know Paul, who was the original person that ran audiobookraeviewer.com, and now Charla White and others took it over, and they decided to add these awards, these annual awards, and they were kind enough to review. They did some beautiful reviews for the Avery Nolan adventure series that you and I did. They also worked on some other books. They did reviews of other books that I've done with other authors that fall more into the science fiction or paranormal or fantasy. And so it was perfect to ask them that they were interested in reviewing the Samar series. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is an 11-book series, and I don't think you or either of us thought that it would get any attention because it's really in its fledgling, it's really in its beginning. But we were lucky enough. The World of Samar was given the best series of 2020 by audiobookraeviewer.com, which was very exciting for the series. I know it's special to you, ML, because it's where you started. I also I just think it's an extraordinary series, and maybe we'll talk about that. Bruce becoming a part of it was part of what you and I brainstormed as making it special. I mean, fantasy, right? It's got to be epic. But I'm terribly proud of the other 2 awards that we won. In particular is the Team Award, the Best Author and Narrator Team. For 2020, audiobookraeviewer.com felt that you and I are uniquely matched as an author and narrator, and that just, I mean, you know how I feel about you, and so it was very exciting to win that award. And then I still can't get over that they were kind enough to give me the award for Best Narrator for 2020, which you do a job and you do a thing, and I think it's true with actors everywhere, on stage, on camera. Awards have become very political, particularly in film and television, and they're more like advertising than they are really an assignment of valor. so this came out of nowhere, and it meant a lot. So those are the 3 awards: Best Series for 2020, Best Narrator Author Team for 2020, and Best Narrator for 2020 for World of Samar.
Yeah, so exciting. So just to kind of get into this idea of how different this series is, we did decide, and to be frank, it really came from you and Bruce, to kind of do something epic with this series and bring something more to it than what we usually bring, which I have to say, when I say that, I kind of need to put a caveat there. You guys do unique things with all of the books, but this was a different departure. This was something completely unique. And so just to start, I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I have them going when, in the morning when I'm getting ready. I have them going when I clean the house. I have them going when I take the dog for a walk. And sometimes there will be a little short song at the beginning of the book, and maybe, a snippet will appear towards the end of the book that identifies either that series or identifies something, but it doesn't really carry through. It doesn't really add, it doesn't really bring anything more to the book. It's just there. It's just not really tied in well. And this one for ours, you guys decided to add a unique soundscape to this series. And what I think is really unique is that you added it and you changed it because the series advances by generations, and you changed it based on the generation that the series advanced through. So what was it, both Bruce and Kelly, that sparked that about this series, that sparked that desire to do something so different and bring this soundscape into the series, unlike anything else I've ever heard in an audiobook?
That's nice to hear that it's different than anything you've ever heard in an audiobook.
So,
I mean, we like to think it's something, peculiar and unique, but to actually hear that from not only an author, but a listener and a reader. But why don't you start?
Well, I think it was on one of our many dog walks where Kelly went, there's this incredible book that ML and I are going to do, and it needs some music. And then she started explaining, so I didn't have to read the book, explaining about it. So at that point, as a composer, you kind of put together your palette, what instruments, what sounds, what textures, what atmosphere am I going to bring to this? Because if I can't make it better or either improve or add to it, it doesn't make any sense to do it.
right.
I do a little cha-cha at the beginning. I don't know if that's the world of Samar has a cha-cha in it. So I got my palette of instruments together. I think I sent you a picture of them. A lot of metal and some big drums. And the first thing that came to mind was I wanted to create kind of a ceremony, sort of a marching ceremony to kind of a procession, maybe kind of open the doors to the book.
Yeah.
And then we wanted a sound to begin each chapter. So that's that, which is sort of like a drum with an echo on it.
Yeah.
And then I got to use one of my really cool instruments, I think for Star, was the, am I mixing?
No, Star was the beginning of the next generation, right?
Yes. Yeah, it is.
There it is.
So it's this instrument. So it's a metal instrument that has tongues. So this is a.
It looks like a spaceship.
Spaceship. So, which is appropriate, I think.
That's amazing. That's so incredible. How exciting that is.
It's called a Rav Vast drum. It's patterned after a hang drum. That's probably about $4,000 now. This not quite as much, but I have a couple of those in keys I like to play in: A minor and D minor flat 7.
And so. Bruce is a percussionist, and it made sense with the whole the environments that you described, first of all, and secondarily just the war, all the wars that go on and the struggles that go on, that it made sense for it to be a percussive soundtrack, as opposed to something lyrical or Hans Zimmer, anything like that. And that's when, and then just allowing it. So that's why that's when we came up with soundscape as opposed to soundtrack. Right. And it's, I mean, it's epic fantasy, so it's got to be epic, right? And
Yeah.
as I recall, you almost didn't let us record this. I mean, at all. You weren't sure you wanted to take it to audiobook, right?
Yeah. It's a major haul. It's a dedication, and I mean the book is over 600 pages, so I was worried how that was going to play. How naive, right? I mean, people are looking for longer books, they're looking for more of an experience, and but I thought it was too long, I thought it was too cumbersome. And that it was so epic in its scope that I wasn't sure how it was going to play in an audio format, so I
It's
was.
it's exhausting. It's
Yeah.
exhausting when we finish one, each book. I mean, it's
Yeah.
each one is its own journey, and it is I can see where you would go there, but I mean, I've said this. I think this is going to be the one for us. I mean, I think we're going to be able to retire on this series when we're done. It's so wonderful.
Well, it's certainly, I mean, obviously, we've already seen through the award that we got that people are responding to it. So, and I'm already, I mean, it's just been out for what, has it been out for even a week on the box set, and the sales
Barely.
are really strong for it. So, that's super exciting. So my next question, kind of to you and Bruce, is each section of the world of Samar has its own sound, and we talked about the generational sounds. I think we kept it the same for the first two books, and then the third book, we made new sounds. How did you decide which sounds would go with each volume? I mean, to me, that seems like that's a really difficult choice to decide what like you talked about the percussive nature, and of course the first book is very war oriented, and that makes total sense. How did you decide which sound? I mean, like the third book is more of an adventure book. They're not really at war, they're going on an adventure, and the sounds are very different in that book than in the first two, which are very much more war oriented. So what made those, how did you make those choices stylistically for each one of those?
Well, Kelly, Kelly and I talked about what was going on in the book. So, it's like scoring a film, where is this going to go? What is going to go in there? What are the right sounds for it? So in listening to her, listening to Kelly, I decided, what is my palette? And you don't want to use too many colors. And so I chose maybe a handful. So, and they were metal. And actually one was a bunt pan.
Pig pan.
It sounded awesome. And then I have some other adventurous metal instruments and some gongs, and I used a bow on the gong to give an eerie sound, just for the tension and release. I wanted long sounds and short sounds. I wanted metal and skin, so deep, low skin, and then so you have to, the tessitura, or how the high to the low of the instruments and where they all sit. So I took the same instruments and just rearranged them.
Oh, okay.
So it's like I'm making a bowl of pasta that this time I'm going to use oregano and not basil.
Yeah.
So it's and then I can look on the screen and I can see all the instruments and their tracks, and then I can manipulate them within the magic of Pro Tools. So once the instruments are in and there's an arrangement, I can rearrange it.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you also then didn't you take the instruments themselves that you use for the soundscape, and then in the books when there's the emerald does its thing, radiates its strength,
Right.
or some event occurs, don't those instruments then also sometimes reappear in the
Right.
special effects?
So in the worst sections, I actually used a keyboard, and I found some really interesting sounds in Pro Tools that had a lot of motion and action in the sound.
When you say action, you mean like reverberation, or?
It could be reverberation. It could be how the sound will float. Without getting too technical, it just you find sounds you like, and I can hear the sound and I can take a journey with it.
Yeah.
So, those are my words. The music is, and I'm painting on my canvas is silence. I'm painting.
Right.
But there's the the live instruments that I would oftentimes put in towards a climax of the synthesized section of the war sequence.
And it's fun because I'm upstairs, right? The studio is downstairs. And
this sounds great. And this is the first time I've been in here at any length. I'm usually outside.
Well, and theoretically soundproof, right? But he'll be recording these soundscapes and I'll be upstairs and all of a sudden you'll hear all these boom, boom, and light coming through the rafters and the dog will bark and, it's all very exciting. But also, and just a point with the way that Bruce says that he talked to me and I filled him in on like what might be an approach for the book. But that information for me, of course, I read the book, but also if you'll recall, you and I had a conversation early on when we were prepping to start this whole series. And I asked you a lot of questions. The series is broken up into 4 box sets. Is that correct? Or basically 4 generations?
I think so. I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. And so as we were prepping for the series, we agreed that we wanted a new soundscape for each box set or each generation. And I talked to you, I said, okay, if you had 3 or 4 words to apply to what happens, in this box set, what are the words? What's the main event? What are the colors you think of when you think of this generation or this series? And then I shared those with Bruce.
And I can translate your words into music.
That's amazing. Which kind of leads in to my next question perfectly. It segues right into it. Most people would think that reading books and writing music are very different processes. And is there any similarity in your mind between both mediums? And if so, what is that similarity? Because you would think most people would say there's books and then there's music and they're not similar. But obviously we've proven that's not true. So,
right.
So what do you think are what is the similarities you think in that whole approach between those 2 mediums?
Simply, I'm telling a story. And
okay.
That was important to me. Even before I start anything, I have to hear it in my head first, and then I can go through that. And that's the fun part. And it might be the same with you. If you're kind of writing in your head before you actually sit down. Imagine. So I hear it first, and then the smile comes, and I go, "Yeah, this is going to be really cool." So. When you get that chill, you're on the right plane. And there's our dog.
The dog is here. Claire, right?
Yeah. So and of course your words and how Kelly reads your words, that I get inspiration from that also. And so I'm listening to these sections. Some are 5 minutes long, where it has to be a beginning in music and has to go somewhere, and then there has to be either a release or a peak, and so it can't be this all the way through. And there are all times when the music will drop out, and that oftentimes not having music can highlight something interesting in the words. It's a blast. It's fun.
Well, and as you say, I mean, they're both, music and books, they both represent a journey.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, you can describe it as something as simple as a beginning, middle, and end, but the fact of the matter is that when done well, whichever medium takes you on a journey. Yeah. And that journey can be, it can make you feel better. It can heal you. It can be transformative in whatever. I mean, I've wept at beautiful music, and I've wept reading a book. And, I mean, in that regard, I don't see them as that different at all. It's an intuitive journey, right? It's an emotional journey. In one, you use your ears. In audiobooks, of course, you use your ears, and reading, you use your eyes. They both require, they ignite your imagination. And yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you could call one intellectual in the sense that in books, we have to translate language into meaning. But in music, you translate notes, right? You translate notes and sound into meaning. So, I think there's a lot of similarities.
Oh yeah.
That's an interesting point. I remember when my two older sons were taking music in school, the music teacher, extremely talented music teacher, said music is a language, and to approach it as a language. And so that's interesting that you say that.
What, Bruce? So music is math.
Yeah.
It's a combination of math and emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
So Kelly has remarked a few times that we should create a experience for our listeners, rather than just the straight audio book. That it should be a whole experience. And you've added, and I don't know if this is the correct word, but you've added reverberation. You've brought in other sounds, especially to the murder mystery series. I'm thinking of, there was a layering in Goblins at the end of the word surprise.
Right.
And it was a surprise to me. But you've layered that in with the different character voices. And I'm always super excited to see what you two will come up with next. Every once in a while, you guys will slip something in and I'll be listening, and then I'll have this visceral reaction like, oh my gosh, it's so fun to hear those when they come in there. How do those moments come about? Like, how do you suddenly decide, you know what this needs right here? This needs a gong, or, how do you make those decisions like that?
You're so great that way. You are so great that way because you trust us. You trust us. We know that we can, if we get an idea and we can run with it and surprise you with it, and that you will be completely honest with us. It won't make you afraid you're losing control, which I have had relationships with authors where maintaining control was an issue for them. You obviously have enough self-esteem that you're not worried about that. But so it's fun to surprise you. And it all began, what was it you said? The very first time something came along and we knew it couldn't you could, but why do something the same old way everybody's doing it? That's kind of where I always come from. It's like, you can dial it in, just read the book and be done with it. But why? What's the point? But what was the very first thing?
The very first thing, and now I'm the engineer, so I'm responsible for make the volume. It has to be, this off, this loud. There's a lot of technical things that I can do, and we have a great studio, and I have software that allows us to know exactly where to put it.
He's being humble.
But now the other hat is with the part of the engineering and composing and finding. We need a sound that's garbled. We need a
ray gun.
Right. Yeah, we need
I need the sound of a powerful jewel exploding. Okay. Right. And then I walk away and he has to come up with it.
But even before that, I this voice is over an intercom. This voice is over a phone. The very first thing was a speakerphone. Right. So you wrote in one of the early Peytons, right? Peyton puts him on speakerphone, and it's like, well, it can't just sound the same. It's on a speakerphone. It's audio. Right. And of course, the first thing is a telephone, right? When they talk on the telephone. And so all that is this. Whenever somebody talks to somebody on the telephone, because people talk on the phone. I can do it better in Pro Tools. It doesn't sound. But the speakerphone, when they were on speaker, like on a desk on the speakerphone, it had to be different, right? It can't sound like when they're on the phone. So that was the very first thing. But then Psychic Thoughts was the next. Yeah, Memories and Psychic Thoughts. Right. Then one of the other ones was in the very first Zion.
when the computer game, there was a voice from a computer game.
Oh,
Remember
yeah.
that was probably the first sort of test of doing something, having a sound that would then carry through, that would be memorable, but that wouldn't give anything away, that kind of thing. And because there's that aspect to it, right? It's like if you do a thing and when it's introduced in the book, if you're not supposed to be giving away exactly what it is, then you need to just do it a little bit so that later when it's revealed what it is, the listener will go, oh, that's what it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so those were the early ones, very practical sounds. Another one.
But the other thing, you need to understand what the narrator is saying. You just can't make a wash. Oh yeah, that sounds like she's talking, in a football arena. But so there has to be some of Kelly's dry, non-processed signal
Right.
in.
Yeah. And yeah. So, I mean, the number one objective, right, is that they have to be able to understand what I'm saying.
So to do that, Bruce, do you layer the sounds? I mean, I don't know. I mean,
Percentage of effect. Like there are some effects I put like 5% effect, and it's just enough. I mean, most people have headphones on, or
yeah.
you're really close to, you're connecting with the words, so
Yeah.
you have to. And just in any kind of music that I add, it has to support the words. It has to make sense.
And
It can't be like, man, this is really cool. I mean, she shot me down a couple of times. Listen how cool this is. Yeah, it's cool, but I really can't hear what I'm saying. No dinner for you.
He cooks. He's the cook.
I know. I've had Bruce's cooking.
I think it's a really fine line because there's a 3 rule that I kind of, and it's funny because comedy, right? It's got to be the rule of comedy is it's 3 times, which anybody that's listening to this that knows that will be laughing now, and anybody that doesn't, it's not worth explaining. But in the audiobooks, I try not to assign more than 3 epic or near epic audio sections because it's an audiobook. It's not an audio drama. It's not a film. It's not the sound for a film. It still needs the focus still needs to be on your words.
Yeah.
And that never leaves my mind. Your words tell the story, not the special effects. If the special effects can, when necessary, elevate your words to make them even more effective or elevate the atmosphere in which your words are communicated, then it's appropriate. But if it starts becoming all about sounds and whiz bang and special effects and stuff like that, then it's not. And the surprise, the one you're talking about, is that that's at the end of Goblins, right?
Yeah.
So Goblins is book 9, and Peyton Brooks' Mysteries was 8 books, right? Or 9 books also.
No, it was 8 books with the prequel.
So we've now known these people through 17 books.
Yeah.
And this party is a particularly important party. This party is a particularly important party at a particularly important time. And we already know who's at the party. They've spoken individually. So for me to just go, surprise.
Yeah.
Well,
we know them.
I talked about my palette of, finding sounds and then finding harmony and melody. I'm really impressed with Kelly's palette. For every book, we have marked the sound of each character. So so if she forgets what Marco sounds like, she goes to Marco, and the computer Zoom will go to Marco, and she can hear that. So
the very first utterance of Marco's.
Right. Yeah. So the fun part when all those voices came in, maybe there were like 7, maybe 7. I might have left one out, but the surprise where they all came in. So each one of those surprises, just her saying surprise as Maria or as Abe, you know, just her saying surprise. Oh, that's Abe. That's Marco. That, you just, so she's very specific with her sound, and it's just really impressive that
Well,
she keeps that so consistent.
That means the world to me for him to say that, because he's not free with compliments. But what was funny is we recorded that and he mixed it, right? Because I just did surprise. So if you think of the recording as a horizontal line, right? So this inch was me saying surprises Maria, and then this inch was me saying surprises Jake, and then this inch.
But they were on top of one another like that.
Well, when I recorded them, they were in a straight line, and then Bruce took them out of the straight line and stacked them on top of one another.
I made them horizontal.
Yeah, and you made them vertical.
That's right.
Yeah.
Don't touch.
This is our life. This is our life. But what was funny is that he mixed it then with his knowledge of the characters, right? That Maria would be the one pushing to the front of the room, that Tank would be late. He would be late saying it. And he mixed it, and I listened to it, and I went and without hearing his thought process, and I heard it, and I was like, no. And I think you and I both did this. We said, oh, maybe if it was and this one, he's like, no, Tank would be the last one to say it. Maria would be shoving everyone out of the way. Jake would be laughing.
I don't talk like that.
He doesn't talk like that. But he defended. He defended his mix.
But I remixed it for her, but we ended up with my mix.
Yeah, because he was right.
Well, she sent it to me and she asked me to listen to it, and I went, no, I think it needs to be closer together. And then she gave me the pitch, and I went, oh my gosh, that is right. That's so on point with what the characters are and their personalities. And of course Tank would be the last one because he can't quite get it out,
Who was the character that we modeled after Jim Fox, the Foxy? He does the Kings hockey.
Oh, that's Tank, I think.
Tank,
yeah.
His cadence. It's always like, we're gonna shoot, and we're gonna score. There's always a little pause there.
It's Tank.
You should do Tank like Foxy.
Go Kings.
So I have one last question for you guys. Audiobooks are so big right now, especially with the pandemic. They've become really huge. Everyone is listening to them. Every generation is listening to them now. It's not just, I can remember when I was a kid going on a road trip with my parents, and they had the cassette tapes for the Lord of the Rings, and they would put the cassette tapes in, and we'd listen to it on the Lord of the Rings on the road trip. But that was the only time we ever listened to them. But if I gave you guys a crystal ball, what would you predict would be the direction that audiobooks are going to go? Meaning, do you think we're on the cusp of a new type of entertainment, a fully immersive experience in terms of sound, where it melds the music and the soundscape and all of that together with the audiobooks? Or, I mean, just where do you think this is going to go? Do you think that what is the future if you were to be able to foresee it?
The future is here and there. I like where we're going. What I like about, it's so great that we have you. It's so much fun to do these audiobooks. And now that I'm getting more involved with the magic of it, technically, everything's in mono. Most audiobooks are mono, and it might be interesting to start doing stereo, because then I can place different things in space. I can make it more spatial. I can make it wider.
Yeah.
Because it takes twice as much memory, and which is hard drive space, and we have a lot of hard drives here. So that might be interesting to start doing some stuff in stereo.
I think it's very interesting, right? Because the thing about audiobooks is that it not only gives you a personal experience, and comparatively it's affordable, but it's also, even if you're in a large group of people, you can still have this personal experience, which is, I think, why we've seen the explosion that we've seen during the pandemic in terms of popularity. Um, I think that there's a very interesting divide and if we're just talking audiobooks here, there's a very interesting divide in terms of audiobooks that are recorded by big publishing houses, and often they will use stars, celebrities to record. And with the halt or slowdown in filming, more and more celebrities are getting into audiobooks. And I think as long as there's always going to be an audience that um, they want to hear and be able to recognize that it's Colin Firth telling them this story. And Colin Firth is a wonderful audiobook narrator. Um, but you're not suspending anybody's belief in that situation, right? It's a story, it's not real, and it's Colin Firth in your ear. And it's the same in film, when you watch an actor you don't know, they become that character, and you can literally suspend your presence in the world and become engrossed in that story. And I think that's where what we do, the way you write, that we have this opportunity to really give people an otherworldly experience. And then if we take that responsibility seriously and try to do something special, which I believe the three of us are. I think you and I and Bruce are committed to that, committed to not being ordinary in terms of the way you write or the stories that we tell or how we tell those stories. And as long as we remain committed to that and bring integrity to the table in the work that we do and the way that we put it out there, I think the sky's the limit. I mean, we see it in our sales, we see it in the people who are just in the response that we had in terms, even if you go back to these awards, I mean, this was remarkable the way audiobookraviewer.com and their listeners have responded to World of Samar. And so, yeah, I mean, as particularly, well, I don't want to, if our world is becoming smaller, if our world is becoming less expansive, if we must draw in order to be safe, then this is the perfect experience. And, hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully we can continue to expand and, get it out there. But I think, and we'll talk about Moon Thief, right? That's the next relief. The new series we're doing called The Moon Thief. Well, it's the Moonlight trilogy, right? And the first book is called The Moon Thief.
Super cool book.
Yeah, I mean, if the world expands as opposed to turning inward, I have always said from the beginning, and I continue to think it, that your stuff is incredibly cinematic. It should all be shot. It's all limited series or episodic. It's great stuff. It's so,
Well, with that, I think we'll end our session for today, but I appreciate you guys coming on, and this is really exciting. I think there was some great stuff today. Thank you, Bruce, for sharing
my pleasure.
Your artistry with us and taking us to that next level.
Yay.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for Hamilton and Hazen Behind the Mic. Visit authormlhamilton.net and kellyhazennarrates.com to join our newsletters for more insider news and views. Today's episode is sponsored by Phoenix Publication Services. PPS, Digital Shepherds. Let us ignite your writing goals.